Okay, let's unpack this. We usually think of sleep as just shutting down, right? Your brain powers off, body rests. But what if it's the absolute opposite? What if while you're snoozing, your brain is actually pulling an all-nighter, doing some of the most critical repair and organization work of your entire day?
That's pretty much the surprising starting point from the source material for this deep dive. It sort of flips that whole idea of sleep on its head.
Right.
And it positions nighttime not as passive rest, but as this intensely active period, really vital for neurological maintenance and, well, regeneration.
And our sources zero in on a really fascinating concept. This nighttime ritual, drawing from Japanese traditions, seems designed specifically with people in mind as they get older, maybe someone over 60.
Exactly. And it's built on the principle that how you prepare for sleep dictates how effectively your brain actually uses that time.
Which, okay, leads to a really powerful question the sources pose. What if that feeling of forgetfulness or the brain fog or just, plain mental fatigue that can creep in with age?
Yeah.
What if it isn't just an inevitable slide? What if it's a form of starvation?
Starvation.
Not lacking food, they say, but starving your nervous system of the very specific environment and raw materials it needs to do its job at night.
Starvation. Wow, that is a strong word, isn't it?
It really makes you stop and think.
Yeah.
So our mission in this deep dive is to pull the key insights from these sources, understand how this deliberate preparation before you close your eyes can potentially impact mental clarity and memory, especially, in your later years.
Okay, so where do we start? What's the brain really doing?
Right, when you're actually asleep.
Well, it's incredibly busy. While your body is still, your brain is anything but. It's processing the day's events, deciding what information to keep, maybe what to discard.
Sorting things out.
Exactly. It's actively consolidating memories, shifting them from temporary holding into long-term storage where you can access them later. And crucially, it's running this sophisticated cleanup system. Yeah, flushing out metabolic waste products and toxins that build up during the day while you're awake and active.
Huh. So it's like the ultimate overnight cleaning crew and, I don't know, filing clerk all rolled into one.
That's a great way to put it. And according to the source material, this complex, essential work filtering, organizing, cleaning, it isn't something the brain just does automatically, no matter the conditions.
Wow. Okay.
It needs preparation. You actually have to set the stage, provide the right cues, and, well, the necessary support for it to do its job right.
Which brings us back to that powerful, maybe slightly unsettling idea from the sources. The danger of starving the brain.
It's a vivid metaphor, isn't it? Going to sleep without this deliberate preparation, the sources argue, is sort of akin to actively starving the system.
And again, just to be super clear, we're not talking literally missing a meal here.
No, not physical hunger in your stomach.
Yeah.
It's more about denying the nervous system the very specific support it requires for that critical regeneration period during sleep. Think of the analogy used in the sources. The brain is this huge library that needs to file new books, maybe repair old ones, keep everything tidy overnight.
Right.
But the librarian, well, they need light, they need tools, they need energy to get that work done properly.
Okay, I'm picturing it. A busy library after hours. And if you don't provide that,
Then you essentially starve the system of what it needs. There are no calming signals of safety, no readily available building blocks.
so instead of deep work,
Instead of entering that deep restorative mode to do the complex filing and repair, the brain kind of stays in a sort of emergency or conservation mode. It just tries to get through the night, prioritizing basic function over that deep restoration.
and the source points out this isn't just a one-off thing, it's the cumulative effect, night after night.
Precisely. You might not feel it acutely after just one night of, let's say, poor sleep preparation.
Yeah.
But over time, this neglect builds up.
Okay.
This, the sources suggest, is why you might experience that persistent brain fog in the morning, or the forgetfulness that feels like it's just part of getting older, and maybe a mental fatigue that even extra coffee doesn't quite shake.
This leads us nicely into a story the sources share that really makes this concrete. The example of Mr. Yamamoto.
Ah, yes, Mr. Yamamoto. He was, 74? A retired school principal?
Right.
The sources describe him as disciplined, but experiencing those small, frustrating instances of forgetfulness, forgetting names, misplacing keys, walking into a room and poof, why am I here?
We've all been there. Not dementia, they say, but those common, slightly worrying lapses.
Exactly. The kind that can feel like a sign of age creeping in.
And his nightly routine before he made a change.
Well, he had quite reasonably by a lot of common Western health advice. Cut out all food after 6 p.m.
Which sounds sensible on the surface.
Yeah, maybe to manage weight or just for simplicity. But what he wasn't considering, especially at 74, was that he was sending his brain into an 8-hour fasting period every night with basically no support.
No support, meaning?
Meaning no gentle protein, no calming nutrients to help it perform its crucial repair functions during that long window without fuel.
Okay. And the change they describe when he adopted this ritual?
The sources detail a really significant shift when he implemented just a small, simple ritual. It wasn't complex at all.
What did he do?
Just a small bowl of warm tofu broth before bed, followed by a brief, gentle stretch and some mindful breathing. Super simple.
And that small change had an impact, really?
Apparently, yeah. Within a few weeks, his morning clarity improved noticeably. He felt more focused during the day. His memory recall got sharper. His wife even commented on him seeming more, present. The sources really emphasized this wasn't just about the tiny amount of food.
It was the signal.
Exactly. It was the signal. It sent a signal of safety and support to a system that had perhaps unknowingly been operating in this state of low-level emergency every single night.
That's fascinating. So the whole ritual itself is a kind of signal, like flicking a switch.
Precisely. The entire sequence, the warmth, the gentle food, the movement, the breathing, it acts as a powerful cue to the brain. Think of it like the crew dimming the lights after a concert.
Okay, yeah.
It tells your brain, okay, the performance is over. It's time to switch modes now. Time to begin the cleanup, the reset, the deep healing.
And if you skip that signal, just crash into bed.
The brain, the sources suggest, doesn't fully switch into that deep rest and repair mode. It stays slightly guarded, maybe conserving energy rather than fully committing to the vital work of rebuilding and memory consolidation.
Which could explain
Why they connected to those common experiences of waking up feeling groggy or even suddenly wide awake and confused at like 2 or 3 a.m.
Yep.
Your brain hasn't received that all clear signal. It's not fully safe to power down.
And there's actual science behind this signaling idea, right? What's happening physiologically?
Oh, yes, there is. The sources point to research showing that consistent pre-sleep rituals help lower your body's stress hormones, like cortisol.
The stress hormone.
They also stabilize your heart rate variability, which is basically a marker of how adaptable and resilient your nervous system is. And they boost your parasympathetic nervous system activity.
Okay, parasympathetic nervous system. Can you break that down simply for us?
Absolutely. Think of it as your body's rest and digest mode, or maybe rest and repair in this context.
Got it. The opposite of fight or flight.
Exactly. Activating the parasympathetic system tells your brain and body that it's safe to relax, to slow down, and to enter that quiet, stable environment that's necessary for deep sleep, memory consolidation, and all that neurological repair work.
So these rituals aren't just psychological. They literally create the optimal biological state for your brain to do its best nighttime work.
That's the idea, yes.
Okay, this leads us to something that might feel a bit counterintuitive, especially if you're used to common health advice, particularly here in the West. Nighttime nourishment. The sources argue that for someone over 60, completely avoiding food for many hours before bed might actually be, detrimental.
It really does go against a lot of popular advice, doesn't it? Close the kitchen by 7 p.m. That's what we often hear.
Yeah.
But the sources present a very different perspective, and they specifically tailor this advice for people over 60.
Okay, why? Why is it different after 60, according to them?
Well, several reasons are mentioned. As we age, the brain can become more sensitive to fluctuations in blood sugar. Blood flow might also slow down just a bit. Hormone levels shift naturally.
Right.
And significantly, the body tends to enter a state called catabolism faster.
Catabolism. What does that mean in this context? Is that like breaking down?
Yeah, in simple terms, it means your body starts breaking down its own tissue like muscle, and yes, potentially even brain tissue for energy if it doesn't have sufficient fuel readily available, especially during a long overnight fast.
Whoa. So going to bed on a completely empty stomach for 8 or maybe more hours, particularly if you're older.
It could essentially leave the brain in a state where it has to conserve power instead of doing that vital healing, cleaning, and memory storing work.
And night after night.
Night after night. This can subtly chip away at your mental sharpness. It's not likely a sudden event, but over time, it could contribute to that feeling of age-related cognitive decline. The sources suggest you might not be giving your brain the specific fuel it needs for that critical overnight shift.
Okay, so what kind of fuel are we talking about then? Because I'm guessing it's not a late night pizza run.
Definitely not. The sources describe it as sending a warm, gentle message to the brain. It's about providing light, easily digestible protein, maybe some calming minerals, and just a touch of gentle energy. Nothing heavy.
Can you give some specific examples from the sources? What does this actually look like on a plate or in a bowl?
The core example they keep coming back to is that small bowl of warm miso broth with soft tofu.
Okay. Why that combination?
Well, miso is fermented, which is generally great for gut health, and we know the gut-brain connection is huge. Tofu provides easily digestible amino acids, which are like the building blocks for brain repair. And the warmth itself is incredibly soothing to the nervous system.
Makes sense. Any other options mentioned?
Yeah, things like a soft-boiled egg with maybe a small side of steamed greens, or even a tiny piece of white fish cooked simply with ginger. The emphasis is always on warm, light, clean, and really easy for your body to process right before rest.
And what's definitely on the avoid list for this pre-sleep nourishment?
Sugars, absolutely. Cold foods, the sources suggest these can kind of shock the system when you're trying to wind down, and highly processed foods for sure. They just confuse the body's natural rhythm and digestion.
What about people who struggle with things like heartburn? Some people feel like they just can't eat anything close to bedtime without paying for it.
That's a fair point, and the sources do address this. They suggest that often that kind of reaction is a sign of eating the wrong type of food, too heavy, too greasy, too much, or maybe just being out of rhythm generally.
Ah, okay.
A large meal close to bed will likely cause issues. But a small, warm, simple, perhaps liquid-based portion, like the miso soup, is actually designed to be healing and easy on the system. They even suggest that incorporating fermented foods like miso or maybe a pickled plum into the diet overall can support gut digestion, which in turn helps prevent issues like heartburn and supports that calm state needed for sleep.
Interesting. But the ritual isn't just about what you eat or don't eat, is it? The sources bring in a broader Japanese concept here.
Yes, absolutely. Shin Ikino, which roughly translates to the unity of mind and body. It's this philosophy that the ritual isn't just about individual steps, but creating a kind of harmony. The environment around you plays a really big role.
So how do you create that environment of peace before bed?
Well, turning off screens, phones, tablets, TVs, at least 30 minutes before you plan to sleep is pretty crucial. We know that blue light disrupts melatonin production and basically signals your brain to stay awake.
Yeah, that's a tough habit for many.
It is, but important. Instead, the sources suggest actively slowing the household rhythm, maybe dimming the lights, perhaps lighting a small candle, or opening a window for some fresh air.
Setting the mood, almost.
Kind of, yeah. And reading a physical book, they specifically mention something calming, maybe poetic or spiritual, can gently prime your mind for a restful state, rather than stimulating it like screens do.
And movement and breathing are also key parts of preparing the stage, right?
Absolutely. But again, not strenuous exercise, which would obviously be stimulating. We're talking soft, mindful movement designed purely for release. The sources outline a simple sequence, maybe just 5 minutes long.
What kind of movement are we talking about?
Really gentle things. Neck rolls, some shoulder circles, a simple forward fold just hanging loose, letting gravity do the work, and then sitting calmly to breathe.
And the goal isn't fitness.
No, not at all. The goal is just to release tension. This gentle movement increases blood flow, especially to areas that might feel tight from the day, and it helps calm down that sympathetic fight or flight nervous system we talked about. It signals that it's safe to enter repair mode.
And the breathing practice, there's a specific type mentioned.
Yes, hard breathing is specifically mentioned. It's basically slow, deep breaths that expand into your belly, really focusing on making your exhale longer than your inhale.
Okay.
Again, just doing that for 5 minutes can have a profound effect. It strongly activates the parasympathetic system, helps lower cortisol, slows your heart rate, and sends this deep signal of release and calm straight to your brain.
So the sequence matters, the movement prepares the stage, and then the gentle nourishment is like the offering.
That seems to be the flow they recommend, yes. Movement, then nourishment. Together, these acts are deliberately and gently telling your brain and body, okay, the day is done, time to shift modes, time to begin the healing and storage work.
Now, there's also a practice included in this ritual that feels incredibly simple, maybe even a bit fluffy.
Yeah.
But the sources claim it has surprisingly significant impacts. Gratitude.
Gratitude is highlighted as being particularly powerful in this context. Yeah. It sounds simple, but including a practice like writing down just a short list, maybe 3 things you're grateful for before you go to bed.
Okay, but what's the science? Why would feeling grateful help your memory or sleep?
Well, the sources point to studies showing that people who regularly practice gratitude don't just report feeling happier. They also tend to sleep better, experience less depression, and yes, demonstrate better memory recall.
How does it work?
The mechanism suggested is that gratitude actively reduces the brain's perception of threat. If your brain feels safe and calm, it's not stuck in that high alert state,
Right.
which allows it to enter those deeper, more restorative sleep states that are absolutely essential for memory consolidation. It's almost like giving your brain a dose of calm down medicine.
And they actually mentioned specific studies supporting this.
They do. The sources referenced research, I think one was in applied psychology, health and well-being, where simply writing down 3 things they were grateful for resulted in participants sleeping longer and feeling more rested upon waking. And another one, maybe from UC Davis, connected gratitude practice, not just to improve sleep, but also lower blood pressure and even stronger immune function. So it seems to have broad benefits.
So it's not just a nice thought. It's actively shifting your brain state in a way that directly benefits sleep and consequently memory.
Exactly. It helps create the internal conditions necessary for the brain's nighttime work to actually happen effectively.
And you mentioned rhythm earlier when talking about food timing. The sources really emphasize that consistency across the board is absolutely crucial here.
Yes. The brain really thrives on routine. It follows these cycles or rhythms set by things like light, sound, and the timing of activities like eating.
Makes sense.
Erratic patterns tend to keep the brain slightly on edge, always having to adapt, never fully settling. But when you establish consistent timing for that small, warm evening portion, for your gentle movement and for your breathing practice,
You send a clear signal.
you send a consistent message of safety and predictability. Your body literally learned, okay, this means it's truly time to shift gears and enter restoration mode.
This all ties directly back to that core concern for many people, especially over 60, memory loss. How does this whole ritual taken together specifically support memory function as we age?
Well, memory consolidation, locking of the day's learning and experiences, is one of the primary functions that happens during deep sleep.
Right.
But getting into and staying in that deep, stable sleep state requires your internal systems to be in balance. Think your blood sugar, your stress hormones like cortisol, your key brain chemicals. They all need to be playing nicely together.
And the ritual helps achieve that balance. Is that the idea?
Precisely. By providing that light, warm nourishment, you help keep blood sugar stable overnight, hopefully preventing those dips that can wake you up or pull you out of deep sleep. The breathing, the movement, the calming environment, those actively reduce stress and lower those stimulating cortisol levels. The warmth, the specific nutrients, the gratitude practice. They all support neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA, which are essential for relaxation, but also play roles in memory function itself.
So what you're saying, or what the sources suggest, is that memory loss as we age isn't necessarily some automatic, inevitable breakdown of the system.
Right.
But might often be related to simply not providing the brain with the foundational support it needs, especially during that critical nighttime period.
The sources strongly make that case, yes.
Yeah.
They really reframe aging and memory. It's less about a system that's just wearing out, and more often perhaps about a system that is metaphorically hungry, thirsty for the right signals and nutrients, and out of rhythm.
Hungry, thirsty, and out of rhythm.
And by providing what it needs consistently, the potential for maintaining, maybe even improving cognitive function could be significant. This ritual is essentially about giving the brain the conditions it needs to thrive, even as the years go by.
Okay, for someone listening right now who might be feeling a bit overwhelmed by all the health advice out there, maybe thinking, oh great, another thing I have to add to my day. Where do the sources suggest starting? How do you make this not feel like a chore?
That's a really important point. They emphasize starting simply. It's definitely not meant to be another stressful task on your to-do list. It's framed much more as a gentle offering to yourself.
Okay, so what's the absolute simplest starting point described? Like bare bones minimum?
Boil some water. Stir in a spoonful of miso paste. Maybe drop in a few cubes of soft tofu if you have it. Find a quiet spot. Sit down. Sip it slowly, really breathing deeply as you do.
Just that?
And then maybe just 5 minutes of simple movement. Roll your neck gently, circle your shoulders a few times, hang forward loosely, then sit up straight and take 5 slow, deep breaths right into your belly.
Okay, that sounds manageable.
And as you do this, perhaps silently say to yourself something like, I prepare my mind for clarity. And then the final piece, just before you get to bed, grab a notebook or scrap of paper and write down just 3 tiny things you were grateful for today.
3 small things.
Could be anything. The warmth of your mug, a good cup of tea you had, a moment of sunshine, a nice conversation, the cat purring.
Yeah.
Anything at all.
That definitely frames it differently. Not as this demanding health routine, but as a small act of self-care before sleep.
That really seems to be the core message. Aging well, they suggest, isn't about forcing things or fighting against time. It's more about cultivating rhythm, consistency, and a kind of soft strength. It's a gentle, deliberate act of inviting rest and repair into your life.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive. It genuinely challenges how many of us think about sleep, about getting older, and about memory itself. The sources paint such a vivid picture of the brain's crucial nighttime work and what might happen when we neglect to support it, especially as we age.
It absolutely does, and it brings us right back to that really powerful closing thought from the source material that stuck with me.
Which was, remind us.
Memory does not fade with age, it fades with neglect. Before sleep, remember your mind, feed it, calm it, and it will remember you.
Wow. Memory does not fade with age, it fades with neglect. That's quite something. And the invitation, feed it, calm it, and it will remember you. That's a profound thought to maybe just sit with.
Really is.
What if, just maybe, incorporating even one small element of this ritual tonight, perhaps just that warm drink, or 5 minutes of gentle movement, or writing down those 3 small gratitudes, what if that could fundamentally change how you feel when you wake up tomorrow, how your focus is, or perhaps even change your confidence in your own mind as you move forward?
It's certainly worth considering the potential, isn't it? The ripple effect of such simple, consistent actions. Well, it could be surprisingly far-reaching.